Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Ambrose Blowfield back here again from the Sales Mastery Company and here to share with you how to maximize your influence. Now, if you're a business owner or a sales manager or simply trying to have more influence within your team, today's subject is relevant to you. But as I'll cover in today's 10 to 15-minute session, I also want to remind you, influencing others is arguably one of the most important skills to master in any walk of life. Typically, you have to influence your in-laws, you have to influence your customers, you influence your suppliers, your friends, your family, your best friends, and ultimately your customers and clients if you're working in a sales or marketing role itself. Influence is at the heart of how much you get out of life, as well as being at the heart of how much you put into life. Now, if you've downloaded the workbook already by interacting with us on LinkedIn or other social media platforms, you should have this workbook in front of you. If you haven't, please send an email through to admin@salesmasterycompany.com and request Maximize Your Influence workbook, and then that way you'll be able to follow along. Today, I'm going to share with you some brief insights learning from Joseph Grenny, an absolutely expert and best-selling author in the world of management and influence and persuasion, and likewise the amazing guru Peter Drucker, and some of the key insights that he had. Now, I'm going to spin the Peter Drucker ones around because I think a lot of people have exposure to Peter Drucker in many different shapes and forms, and so I thought I'd do a bit of a different spin on today's subject. So let's understand in essence why influence fundamentally matters, and why, if you're a leader, as a senior salesperson, as a sales manager, or even a business owner, why this is something you need to give some effort into. Firstly, what we're trying to do in most of our lives, particularly day to day in a challenging business environment, is we're trying to affect change in others. Now, they talk about the fact that no man or no woman is an island. You can't really grow a successful business and a highly successful brand with only the vision to operate by yourself, which ultimately means the moment you move beyond simply receiving a paycheck and doing a job into trying to lead a team and affect some change, or lead a business or lead a division, that ultimately your situation is changed from I have to work hard for me to produce results into I have to influence the effectiveness of my team and the efficiency of my team and the mindset and the attitude of my team so that I can affect results and change through the team around me. So essentially, you cannot scale without influence. Now, you can try to scale without influence, but ultimately, you're just going to pay lots of money on wages and nothing much is going to change. Here is one of the golden rules to remember about influence. You jumping in to take over somebody's job because they're not quite as good at it as you are, bearing in mind you might have spent years learning to be good, and they might have only spent a few weeks or a few days learning to be as good as you. Doing that disempowers them, disenfranchises them, and typically demotivates them on a long-term basis. And unfortunately, it will become a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you don't believe someone in your team can step up and can learn, then typically if you step in, they will never step up and learn. So it will become self-fulfilling. You will get what you believe to begin with. But let's just think you back to 6 months old. Back then, typically you probably couldn't run, pass, catch, kick, speak, or actually do anything. In fact, every single thing that you're great at right now, you had to learn. Somebody ahead of you or somebody beside you or maybe someone beneath you had to allow you the opportunity to learn and to grow. So please understand that not only is influence important, but you've got to give people the chance to step up. Now, as I mentioned here, motivating a sales team and influencing how their attitude and mindset is every single day is a significant part to any manager or sales manager's role. That is a massive challenge, but so is influencing other divisions to make sure that the marketing team do what your sales team need, or influencing the operations team to support your sales team, or the overall admin and finance team work with your sales team. At the same time, what you also need to do is to become a conduit as a sales manager between what other demands are placed on your team from other divisions. Because again, no sales team should be an island either. We've got to operate within the ecosystem and overall business. So you should be influencing from your sales team into the business and from the business into the sales team. And that happens constantly. Every time you send a text message or a Teams message or a Facebook Messenger comment, or every time you send an email or a phone call, you have a team meeting, you have the chance not only to influence what people do, but also to influence how well they do it. Now, we've recently celebrated the life of my favorite of all the 7 different school principals I had, because I went to 7 different schools in a couple of different countries. The one of my favorites, it was a primary school back in Geneva, just celebrated his life. Sad that he's passed, but what an impact he's had on generations, multiple generations of people around the world. His influence was incredible. Why? Because as a leader, he practiced what he preached. He had integrity. He was inspiring. He was able to focus on the micro and focus on the macro, and he did amazing things. And why am my heart drawn to him? Because he was of great influence to me. He was firm but fair. That's one of the golden rules I believe is applicable to your favorite teacher, to possibly your favorite principal, and certainly to your favorite manager. So the first thing to look at is think about the best parent, the best grandparent, the best teacher, the best coach, the best manager, the best mentor you have ever had, and ask them, what was it in particular that they did that influenced me? What was it I liked about them when I watched them influence other people? And therefore, you can start to mimic and role model some aspects of their work in the way that you manage, you lead, you motivate, and hold people accountable. Now, from my perspective, I cannot become that principal because I'm a different person, but I can take aspects of what I observed, such as remembering people's names and making sure everybody felt really, really special every single day of their lives. And he did that by shaking the hands of 165 pupils every single day and remembering their names every day, which is absolutely phenomenal. And I thought, well, I should take that into my life, which I've done so over the last 30 to 40 years. So please keep in mind, influence is something you can learn from others. Just take one trait from everybody around you think is good at doing so. And I want to remind you, you can learn from those beneath your station in life. So a member of your sales team can probably teach you about influence. A member of your family who's younger than you can probably teach you about influence. Now, as Joseph Grenny said, one of the core mistakes people make when it comes to influence is they fixate. They fixate on one form of motivation, one form of influence, one form of drive, one form of persuasion. So they will either really focus and hone in on, I need to be verbally encouraging. That was what my primary school principal was very good at doing. Or they'll be amazing at the data, particularly if their compliance profile, or maybe they came from a finance or operational role, and therefore they got really comfortable with the numbers. So they'll say, hey, the numbers don't lie, look at the numbers. Now, verbal encouragement and leading with data is perfectly fine. But as I said there, leading with both of those is fine. Just leading with one isn't enough, because the chances are only about 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 of your sales team will particularly respond positively to the data leadership. So if you're only trying to influence through data, you're not going to influence probably 80 to 90% of your team on occasions. Likewise, verbal encouragement, I suspect, will tend to influence about half your team. But again, some of your team might want the data. So instantly, those two need to be adapted together. Likewise, poor incentives. Most often people assume that if I give somebody more money, then it will influence their motivation. But here's a couple of golden rules. Number one, people often value time once they think money is enough. So money will tend to motivate to a point, and then excess money demotivate, but it won't have the same effect. It isn't every $100 you give somebody, you get $100 worth of extra motivation. There comes a point where people say, you know what? My kid's got to go to the dentist, and I don't want the stress and the pain of not being able to take to the dentist. So that would mean a lot more to me. So again, I'm not saying money and time are always interchangeable. I'm simply saying people are motivated by more than one incentive. At the same time, and this is something a sales manager needs to remember, if you've ever tried to put in some sort of commission or bonus scheme or some sort of reward scheme in for your sales team, once you start paying them that, I'm sorry to tell you, but I suspect you've seen them. They will spend at the level, then they will have the expectation they'll be paid at that level, and then essentially money will only ever become a demotivator, meaning if they ever underperform, if the business underperforms, and that money gets taken away from them, they're used to spending and enjoying that level of money every single month, typically partly because people are ill-disciplined when it comes to money. But understand, that will become a demotivator. Humans have an amazing capacity to spend more. We also seem to have an amazing capacity to get used to more money. Now, something we teach in our Sales Mastery Academy is the fact that people can take on a new habit within 21 days. Most of the research for the last 20 or 30 years suggests so. But the research of the last 5 or 6 years suggests that actually it takes 66 days to fully embed a habit where it's very immovable. Meaning, if you started to incentivize somebody just based on money, and after 66 days, they're used to getting that certain reward, it's really hard to get them acceptable that things are going to change again on them. and they'll feel penalized by you or by the company. Then suddenly you'll have a high performer who underperforms for a month, gets demotivated because the incentive is poor, and you didn't even ask them their opinion in the first place. You assumed that you could buy their motivation. And then finally, obviously, bullying tactics don't work. Thankfully, in the last 10 years, most of the environments have been crushing out bullying tactics on a regular basis. But that's one of the comments I want to make is, if you learn from a parent or a teacher or a coach or a former manager, maybe even from a grandparent who took an autocratic leadership style into business, then typically that's it all placed and thankfully completely out of date. So just make sure that you're learning the right things. Maybe you had a tough rugby coach, for example, but maybe that doesn't apply to the workplace. So be mindful of those things. Make sure you adapt. Brute force doesn't work. Certainly, with your kids, if they're going to be running across, a state highway and they might get run over, sometimes you need to kind of grab their hand quite firmly because you don't want them to die. But that's pretty much the only leadership where brute force is going to work, be it verbal, be it emotional brute force, be it mental brute force, even just being the way, you're communicating with your body language. So 2 things to keep in mind. What I'd love you to do is to spend a little time right now, or finish this video, thinking about times when you felt like you nailed it as a leader. All the team members with all the different personalities, cultural backgrounds, experience, and confidence, all of your team were fully aligned to the goal, fully aligned to what you asked them to do. And I really want you that next time you have a meeting like that to stop and think and go, what did I do well here? It wasn't by fluke. It was by influence that you succeeded. You got their motivation, you got their buy-in, and then you produced the results through your team. Number 2, also remember, as the other scenario is, when did you only communicate well or influence half of your team? Or maybe just one member of your team got fired up by what you said and the rest of the team weren't really fired up and you just didn't get it. Stop, analyze. And here's something I'm going to encourage you to do. To maximize your influence, increase your humility. Increase your humility where you can sit down with team members once a month, once a week, or once a quarter and say to them, how am I leading you? How do you find my communication? How do you think my communication works on others? Because sometimes peer-to-peer, people notice what you are or are not doing for other members of the team because they're at the same level. They can see how people's body language is, and maybe you miss it because you're trying to communicate to many people, but maybe they spot things you're doing right and wrong. So please have humility and ask for advice. Now, Peter Drucker is really considered to be the father of modern management, one of the best authors of all time, huge influence, not only won the Presidential Medal of Freedom in the US, but also the Austrian Cross of Honor for Science and Arts, which is absolutely phenomenal, even teaching into his 90s, which is an absolutely amazing thing. And what he says there at the bottom is so relevant. So much of what we call management today consists of making it difficult for people to work. This comes back to my very first point. Encourage people to step up. Allow people to step up. Yes, it took you years to be amazing. It's going to take them years to be amazing because they're probably not that much better than you. But I want to comment, they're also probably not that much worse than you at their stage of development. So the golden rule from Peter Drucker, and as I said, I wanted to do a different spin on his works, is to get out of the way, give people the structure and the opportunity to succeed, and likewise, give people the structure and the opportunity to potentially fail. If they fail, in kicks your influence. How can you influence their behavior, their attitude, their approach, and the steps they take to fail less next time? And then maybe they don't fail at all. And then maybe they succeed the next time. And then maybe they excel there in the future. The whole point for yourself is get out of the way. If you've got the structure, the right team, the right values, the right motivation. That's what we cover in our Sales Manager Accelerator program. It's likewise what we cover in our Sales Manager Fundamentals program. The fact that emotional quotient or emotional intelligence is the most important factor when it comes to leading an effective team. What do I remember from my best coaches of all time? They were effective at the way they communicated. So here are 6 great golden rules for you to take away and apply directly into you maximizing your influence. Number 1, try to sell your ideas to the team if you're a sales leader. They have to sell their ideas to customers, so they need a bit of persuasion and a bit of effort put into selling them ideas such as what their paycheck, what the bonus team is going to be, or the bonus system is going to be, or likewise what the goals are for the coming month. Number 2, please make sure that you focus around other things in terms of focusing on bigger battles, being respectful to others, supporting all final decisions. So if a team member's made a decision to call somebody and they did it a particular way, you've got to back that because they were the one in the position to make a decision. If you make a decision, back yourself up. Likewise, Accept that people make mistakes. It's important to do that. You'll make mistakes, I'm sorry to tell you, no matter what your grandparents told you. And likewise, your team members are going to make mistakes. It's about how do I influence them afterwards and making sure they don't have an emotional dive afterwards and take no risks moving forward. Risk taking is learning. It's really important to keep that in mind. Okay, next up, I'd like to comment around don't obsess about being right. Nobody promoted you to a position of business ownership or leadership exclusively because you knew more than anybody else. We live in a world now where pretty much knowledge is at our fingertips. It's so effortless right now. We don't need you to know all the answers. In fact, if you think back to your favorite principal or your favorite school teacher, just picture them right now. Did you love and respect them and respond well to them because they knew more than anybody else? I doubt it. I imagine you love and respected them. And the reason why you're thinking about them is you like the way they influenced others. They like the way they communicated. You like the way they made you feel. So the best leaders in the world are the leaders who can influence and motivate and hold people accountable. They're not the people who know the most knowledge. So being right all the time is not something to obsess over. Now, as I mentioned before, we've got a couple of amazing sales manager programs. If you want to engage with us on that, that would be great. Likewise, we've got our world-class Sales Mastery Academy, where we're interacting most weeks in order to motivate you, hold you accountable, actually get you to master the 4 key growth areas of sales, whether that's attracting new customers, closing sales without discounting, growing your existing accounts through proactive account management, or indeed scaling your inbound process and scaling your sales team. You're welcome to send an email anytime to admin@salesmasterycompany.com. We'd love to have a chat about how we can help your business move forward. Please share this video and, of course, this workbook with as many people as you can. We want to help influence those that can help influence others to build a global economy we've got to be proud of and build the industries we work in to be the way we want them to be. I've been Ambrose Blofield. We're the Sales Mastery Company. And as always, take action.